The tunnel was dark, damp, and forgotten, just like the secret it held. No one in the quiet town of Millfield ever dared to go near it, not even the curious kids who played in the woods. But Max, a golden retriever with a nose for adventure, didn't know the meaning of fear. That afternoon, as he chased a squirrel through the trees, he skidded to a stop at the tunnel's gaping entrance. His ears perked up. His tail wagged. And before his owner, Sarah, could call him back, he vanished into the shadows. Sarah's heart pounded as she sprinted toward the tunnel, her voice echoing off the moss-covered walls. "Max, come back!" But the only reply was the distant sound of paws scraping against stone. The deeper he went, the colder the air became until even the sunlight seemed to hesitate at the threshold. Then silence, a long, eerie pause, and suddenly Max's bark erupted from the darkness, sharp and urgent. Not the playful yap he made at squirrels, but something different, something alarmed. Sarah fumbled for her phone, her fingers trembling as she switched on the flashlight. The beam cut through the black, revealing Max pawing at the dirt near the tunnel wall. His nose was pressed against something metal, something buried. A rusted hinge glinted in the light. Her breath caught. This wasn't just some old junk. This was a box, and from the way Max whined, it wasn't meant to stay hidden. Some secrets aren't meant to stay lost forever. Sarah's flashlight beam trembled as she knelt beside Max, her knees sinking into the damp earth. The metal box was smaller than she expected, about the size of a bread box, its surface pocked with rust and caked with decades of grime. Max whined again, his warm breath fogging the cold metal as he nudged it with his nose. "What have you found, boy?" Sarah whispered, her voice swallowed by the tunnel's eerie acoustics. The box didn't budge. When she pulled, it was wedged tight beneath a jutting stone, as if someone had deliberately hidden it there. As Sarah worked her fingers around the edges, her nail caught on something unexpected, crude carvings in the metal. She wiped away the dirt, revealing strange symbols that looked almost like letters, numbers. The markings were worn nearly smooth by time, but one stood out clearly. 1944. A chill ran down her spine that had nothing to do with the tunnel's damp cold. This box had been waiting here since WWII. The sudden scrape of shifting gravel made them both jump. Max's ears shot up as a trickle of dirt rained from the tunnel ceiling. Sarah instinctively shielded the box with her body, as if the tunnel itself might try to reclaim its secret. When the dust settled, she noticed something even more peculiar: faint scratches in the stone wall behind the box. Not random marks, but deliberate lines forming some kind of arrow pointing deeper into the darkness. Max was already moving, his nose to the ground, following some scent Sarah couldn't detect. The beam of her flashlight revealed more carvings along the tunnel wall, not just arrows now, but words. Faded, crumbling words in what looked like German. Her high school language classes came back in fragments. Achtung, verboten, Jeffar, danger. The warning was clear, but so was the pull of discovery. Somewhere ahead, the tunnel curved sharply left, disappearing into blackness. Whatever lay beyond, that bend had been hidden for a reason. Sarah's fingers tightened around the box. It wasn't heavy, but something inside shifted with a muffled thunk. Max let out a soft woof and pawed at her leg, his brown eyes reflecting the flashlight's glow. They could turn back now, return to sunlight and safety. But as the beam caught those German words again, and the unmistakable outline of a swastika someone had tried to scratch out, Sarah knew this was no ordinary discovery. The tunnel had kept its secrets for 80 years. It was time to learn why. The box groaned as Sarah pried it open, its rusted hinges protesting after decades of silence. A musty scent of old paper and damp metal filled the air. Inside, wrapped in crumbling oilcloth, lay 3 objects. A yellowed photograph of a young soldier, his face frozen in a nervous smile. A brittle envelope marked "For Main Family" in faded ink, and a small brass key that felt strangely warm to the touch. Max sniffed at the photograph and whined, his tail stiffening as if he recognized the man in uniform. Sarah's hands trembled as she unfolded the letter. The German script was elegant but hurried, the ink bleeding in places where moisture had seeped in. She could only make out fragments. Mein lieb Elsa, dieser Tunnel, sei werden es nie finden, but one line stood out clearly: Der Schlüssel öffnet die Wahrheit. The key opens the truth. Her pulse quickened. This wasn't just a lost memento, it was a message meant for someone, a warning. A sudden gust of wind howled through the tunnel, extinguishing her phone's flashlight. In the suffocating dark, Max's growl rumbled low in his throat. Then footsteps. Not the scuff of paws on stone, but the deliberate crunch of boots. Someone was coming. Sarah shoved the items back into the box, but it was too late. A beam of light sliced through the blackness, pinning her against the wall. A man's voice, sharp with disbelief, cut through the silence. "Wo haben Sie des gefunden?" The beam lowered, revealing a face weathered by age, deep wrinkles, steel-gray eyes, a jagged scar running from temple to jaw. He wore a faded coat with a peculiar insignia on the lapel, an eagle clutching a key. His gaze locked onto the box in Sarah's hands, and for a heartbeat, his stern expression fractured into something like grief. Then his voice dropped to a whisper. "Sie sollten das nicht berührt haben." You shouldn't have touched that. Behind him, the tunnel walls seemed to press closer, the carvings glowing faintly under his flashlight's beam. The arrows Sarah had noticed earlier now pointed unmistakably to one spot, a section of wall where the stones formed a perfect rectangle, a door, and in its center, a keyhole. Max barked once, sharp, urgent, as the old man reached into his coat. But instead of a weapon, he pulled out an identical brass key, its teeth worn smooth with use. His hands shook as he spoke again, this time in heavily accented English. "The tunnel remembers, and now it will show you why." The old man's key clicked in the hidden door with a sound like a sigh of relief. As the stone slab groaned inward, a rush of stale air carried the scent of old ink and gunpowder. Sarah's flashlight revealed a small chamber, its walls lined with filing cabinets and a single wooden desk covered in maps. Max darted inside before she could stop him, his nails clicking against the concrete floor. The man, who'd introduced himself only as Herr Bauer, didn't seem surprised by the room's existence, only by their discovery of it. "All these years," he murmured in German, running a finger along a dusty map of Millfield. The town's landmarks were there, but altered, a factory where the park now stood, train tracks leading right to the tunnel's entrance. Sarah's breath caught when she noticed the red stamps across the documents. Geheime Reichsache, top secret Reich business. Bauer saw her staring and gave a grim smile. This was no ordinary tunnel. It was an escape route for people like me. He tapped the faded photograph in her hand. And for him. The soldier in the picture, Karl Vogel, according to the letter, had been part of a secret resistance cell within the German army. The tunnel connected to a network of safe houses, used to smuggle Jewish families and defectors to the coast. But in late 1944, someone betrayed them. Sarah's fingers trembled as she pieced together the smudged words in Karl's final letter. "They know about the children. The key opens locker 214. Bauer abruptly crossed to the farthest cabinet, his boots kicking up decades of dust. When he pulled out a folder marked Kindertransport, a child's drawing fluttered to the ground, a stick-figure family holding hands beneath a rainbow. The date in the corner read 15, May 1945, 3 weeks before Millfield's liberation. Bauer's voice turned gravelly. "Karl hid 12 children in this tunnel the night the Gestapo came. Only 11 walked out." Max suddenly lunged for the desk's bottom drawer, scratching frantically. Inside lay a small leather journal, its cover embossed with the same eagle end key symbol. Bauer went pale. That shouldn't be here. The journal's entries were a mix of German and coded shorthand, but one page near the end stood out, a list of names under Wiedergutmachung, reparations. The last entry sent chills down Sarah's spine. "Vogel, K. Locker 214 Coast National Bank, für Elsa und Anja." Outside, a car door slammed. Bauer stiffened. "They still watch, even now." He snatched the journal and blew out their flashlight. In the sudden dark, Sarah heard the unmistakable sound of a pistol's safety clicking off. Max's growl turned feral as footsteps echoed down the tunnel, too many to count. Bauer shoved the brass key into her hand along with a slip of paper bearing an address in Switzerland. "Find Elsa," he whispered. "Before they do." The first gunshot ricocheted off the stone as Bauer yanked Sarah behind the desk. Glass shattered as bullets tore through the files, sending decades of secrets exploding into the air. Max barked wildly as the attacker's flashlight swept closer. Then, a sound Sarah would never forget, the wet thud of a bullet finding flesh. Bauer gasped, clutching his shoulder. "The back exit," he wheezed, pointing to a nearly invisible hatch beneath the desk. "It leads to the river." As Sarah pried it open, the last thing she saw was Bauer standing to face the muzzle flashes, the child's drawing clutched in his bloody hand. The tunnel, it seemed, wasn't done remembering after all. The icy river water shocked Sarah's lungs awake as she surfaced, Max paddling frantically beside her. Behind them, muffled shouts echoed from the tunnel's hidden exit now submerged beneath black water. She clutched Bauer's key so tightly its teeth left crescent marks in her palm. The address in Switzerland burned against her chest where she'd tucked it inside her bra, the only dry place left. Dawn found them shivering on the riverbank 3 miles downstream. Sarah's phone was ruined, but the Coast National Bank key survived. Its number 214 gleamed under the morning light like a dare. She expected Max to collapse after their ordeal, but the dog moved with strange purpose, sniffing the air as if following an invisible trail. His ears perked toward town, where the bank's marble facade dominated Main Street. The young teller's smile froze when Sarah produced the key. "This style hasn't been issued since," she trailed off, fingers brushing the eagle insignia. Without another word, she led them to a vintage brass elevator that descended to a sub-basement untouched by time. Behind a gate marked Private Fetcher 200-250, Locker 214 waited. The moment the key turned, the door sprang open as if pressurized. Inside lay a single item, a child's shoe box tied with disintegrating twine. The photo inside showed Carl Vogel kneeling beside a little girl with white blonde braids, Elsa both grinning at a picnic. Beneath it lay a stack of Reichsmarks bound with a note. "Für Anja's Zukunft," for Anja's future. But it was the newspaper clipping that made Sarah's hands shake, a 1946 article about a Swiss boarding school accepting war orphans. A name jumped out. Elsa Vogel, 8, survived the Millfield Kinder transport. Max nosed a folded slip of paper stuck to the box's bottom, a 1980s postcard from Geneva showing Lake Lehman. The shaky script read, "They say my Anya died in the bombing. I don't believe them. If you find her, tell her about the lullaby." The postmark was smudged, but the sender's address was still legible. Shadowy des Fleurs, Rue du Lac. The bank manager appeared suddenly, his cufflinks bearing the same Eagleland key symbol. "That box," he whispered, "was meant for Bauer." When Sarah mentioned Switzerland, his face hardened. He scribbled an email address on his card. "Contact this historian in Geneva, and for God's sake, stop using your phone." That night at Sarah's apartment, Max paced restlessly as she emailed the historian using an internet cafe burner account. The reply came faster than expected. "Elsa Vogel passed in 2012, but her daughter Anya Mueller runs a bookshop in Geneva. She was adopted as a baby after the real Anya died in 45. There's something you should know about the lullaby." A loud crash downstairs shattered the silence. Max's fur stood on end as car doors slammed outside. Sarah barely had time to grab the shoebox before the power went out. Through the window, she saw 3 silhouettes crossing the street, one holding something long and slender. Not a flashlight, a rifle. The last line of the historian's email glowed on her screen. "They've been watching Anya for 70 years. Don't let them get to her first." The back alley reeked of garbage and wet pavement as Sarah sprinted toward her car, Max bounding ahead. Gunshots cracked against the brick walls behind them, sending chips of mortar flying. She fumbled with the keys, the shoebox tucked under her arm like a fragile treasure. The engine roared to life just as a black sedan screeched around the corner. Switzerland was a blur of stolen cars, fake passports from Bauer's historian friend, and Max's anxious panting in the passenger seat. The Shadowy des Fleurs loomed over Lake Geneva, its ivy-covered walls hiding a different kind of secret. Inside, Anya Mueller, a woman in her 70s with Carl's same sharp cheekbones, stood frozen when Sarah placed the shoebox on her bookstore counter. Her fingers trembled as she lifted the photo of Carl and Elsa. "My mother never stopped looking for him," she whispered. Then Sarah hummed the lullaby from Carl's letter, just 4 notes, but Anya's knees buckled. She collapsed into a chair, tears cutting through decades of practiced composure. "That was the tune he whistled when putting me to sleep," she said. "But I wasn't Anya. The real Anya died in the bombing. He saved me anyway." The truth unspooled like thread from a frayed sweater. Carl had switched the children, sending the orphan daughter of a Jewish physicist to safety under his own daughter's name. The men hunting Sarah weren't after treasure. They were silencing the last witnesses to a Nazi war criminal's identity. Anya opened a hidden compartment in the shoebox, revealing a microfilm that named the traitor who doomed Carl's network. "He was my adoptive uncle," she said bitterly. "The man who raised me." Back in Millfield, the town erected a memorial where the tunnel once stood, 12 stones for the children Carl saved. Sarah often brought Max there, watching as he sniffed the plaque bearing Carl's name. Sometimes, in the quiet moments, she imagined she heard whistling on the wind, 4 notes, looping endlessly. On the anniversary of the liberation, Anya visited with her grandchildren. As she placed flowers by the memorial, little Max did something extraordinary. He trotted to the exact spot where the box had been buried and lay down with a contented sigh. Anya smiled through fresh tears. "Dogs never forget," she said, "just like history." The real treasure, Sarah realized, wasn't in locked boxes or buried tunnels. It was in the quiet courage of ordinary people who chose kindness when the world demanded cruelty. And as Max nuzzled her hand, she knew some stories, like some dogs, were meant to find you exactly when you needed them most. The first snow of winter dusted Millfield's memorial garden as Sarah knelt to trace Carl Vogel's name on the plaque. Beside her, Max let out a quiet huff, his warm breath fogging the cold metal. In the stillness, she could almost hear the echo of children's laughter from long ago, carried on the wind like whispers. Anya's letter had arrived that morning, postmarked from Geneva. Inside was a single pressed forget-me-not and a note. "Mother kept a suitcase packed for 50 years, just in case he came back. Now they're finally together." Sarah tucked the flower between the pages of Bauer's journal, its secrets now preserved in a museum where the world could remember. A rustle in the bushes made Max's ears perk. A squirrel darted across the path, and for a heartbeat, Sarah saw a flash of gold fur as her dog gave chase, just like that first day at the tunnel. But this time, he stopped at the garden's edge and looked back at her, tail wagging. No more shadows to chase, no more secrets to uncover. Somewhere beyond the trees, a bird whistled 4 clear notes. Sarah smiled. The past was never really gone, she realized. It lived in the choices we made, the kindness we passed on. And as Max trotted back to her side, she whispered the words that had started it all. "Let's go home, boy." The end.